to the governor, and we'll have a discussion here this evening. So get your questions in to David Hyder. He's in the back of the room. David, raise your hand right there. If you could just give your questions to him, he'll take those, and we'll get this underway in just a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Good evening. Please grab a seat if you'd like, and we're going to begin. I'm Bill Webster, Superintendent of Schools in Lewiston, and it's my privilege to welcome you here tonight. You are in the Green Ladle, which is the headquarters of the Culinary Arts Program for Lewiston Regional Medical Center. The center serves 6 high schools, and the culinary program is our most popular and tremendously successful program. Students from here end up going all over the country for their further education and also for work. So thank you for being here. And again, it's our pleasure to have you here tonight. I think that one of the hallmarks of democracy are opportunities for elected leaders to meet with the public, to help the public better understand their own views, and also to answer the questions. And that is the purpose of tonight's meeting. And I think back to almost 4 years ago, Governor LePage was here with his cabinet for one of the Capital for Day programs. And that program and this meeting, this town-style meeting, are just 2 examples of, I think, what make our democracy great. So it's with great pleasure that I welcome Governor LePage here tonight and join me in this hall. Please remain standing or stand if you haven't, if you've sat down, and join Governor LePage and me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. And let me tell you what we would like to do. One is I would like to give you a synopsis of the 4 topics that I want to talk about, which I think are imperative for the state of Maine to address if we're going to move forward. This is not about politics. I could care less about people's ideology, whether you agree or disagree. What I'm here for is to tell you where we stand in relation to other states in America. The 4th topic, and if you'd like, I would be more than happy to talk about question 1, and I guess there's a local election, we can talk about that. Number 1, income tax. I'm a capitalist at heart, and I make no bones about it. I was born and brought up here in Lewiston, and I left Lewiston and ultimately became a businessman, and I'm topping off my career as your governor. 2nd term. I care dearly for this state. I would love nothing more to see my children and my grandchildren live in the state of Maine and to raise their family in the state of Maine. I would love nothing more than to be able to attract young people to move to Maine because we're the oldest state in America. We have a median age of about 44 years old, which means that one of the big results of that is 14,000 Mainers die every year, and 12,000 Mainers are born every year. Out of the 12,000 Mainers being born, 750 or so babies are afflicted with some type of disabling or crippling disease, whether it's intellectual disability, physical disability, or some problems with motor skills of some sort. Another 1,000 babies are born addicted to drugs. So that gives us a net effect of having 14,000 people dying and 10,250 babies born to replace them in society. Ultimately, if we don't change it, we're going to become extinct. That's a simple fact of life. And like I said earlier, you can believe it, disbelieve it, doesn't make any difference. That's the facts of life. What we need to do to lower the age, to compete with states like Utah, which is 29 years old, we have to have young people who make babies. Healthy babies. Many of you know that concept. So, why income tax? Well, I look around the country and I look at common denominators of what makes a state really successful and prosperous and another state like Maine very poor. We don't have to go very far to see that. We go to New Hampshire and you can see it. The per capita income in New Hampshire is significantly greater than here in Maine. What are the common denominators? They have more business activity. They have the same basic population. They have the same exact drug problem that we have. But they're still more prosperous. Because the people in New Hampshire are freer than the people in Maine. They have less tax burden. They have the ability to do much better planning. They have no income tax, no sales tax. So their decision process is on the property tax. They make their decisions on the property tax. Do we want a big house, or do we want a small house? That's one of the major decisions they make. I want to talk a little bit about the relationship between minimum wage and prosperity. I'll start with my favorite state, Wyoming. Wyoming is almost twice the size of Maine. It has 650,000 people, so it's twice the size, with half the population, no income tax, and $9 billion in the bank. Per capita income much higher, energy much lower. They depend on agriculture and tourism. I will admit they have more natural resources than we have, as they dig for coal, and they have coal. We have a whole lot of rock. But we're not allowed to look underneath the rocks in Maine to see if there's anything there of value. We're not allowed to do that. It's illegal in Maine. We have antiquated 1980s laws, and when we try to update them to more common laws of the current state-of-the-art mining laws, we're not allowed to do that. Because, why? Because the people in the southern part of Maine will not allow the people in northern Maine to earn a good living. Now, I know it sounds harsh and cruel, but it's a fact of life. The votes are in southern Maine, not in northern Maine. It's a numbers game. So I look at Wyoming's minimum wage. It's $5.15. They've never touched it since a long time ago. Lowest in America. You know why? They don't worry about minimum wage because they don't want people making minimum wage. They look for people making living wages, which is what we should all concentrate on. You people in this room tonight should force us, the elected officials, to worry about living wages and career wages and not minimum wage. Why do I say I would rather get rid of the income tax than raise the minimum wage? Very simple. We're the oldest state in America. We have more people per capita on fixed incomes than any other state. So if you raise minimum wage, I defy anybody to tell me it's not going to affect your food. It's not going to affect the things that you need to buy. The necessities of life are going to be affected. With the income tax, you let people keep their money, spend their money the way they want, and you don't need to worry about the income tax because getting rid of $1 billion is going to be make the state far more prosperous than raising the minimum wage a half a dollar, $1 a year, and make ourselves like New Brunswick right now. New Brunswick, 3 years ago, raised their minimum wage to $10.50. And the only province in the planet Canada that did it. And they're falling apart. They're falling apart. They're losing jobs left and right. People are going to Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Quebec, and the biggest winner of the recession in New Brunswick is the Alberta fields. Thousands upon thousands. So that's the reason why get rid of the income tax is the best thing we can do. You keep the money, you decide where you want to spend your money. People say we can't afford it. We had a balanced budget that we put up to the legislature that would have lowered the rate to 5.75. The ideal, I think, optimum rate, if you're going to have an income tax, is 4%. If you could get down to 4% and get rid of the debt tax, I think we'd be better off. Because in Maine, what happens to people who have a little bit of a nest egg, and I'd like to know how many of you know someone that leaves the state of Maine for 6 months of the day so they don't have to have their residency in Maine and pay income tax. If you don't, I can give you names of hundreds of them. Some are in New Hampshire, in Portsmouth, some are in the Lake regions of New Hampshire, some are in Florida, Texas, Arizona, South Dakota. I mean, they go all over the place because they don't have to pay the income tax. And the debt tax is even worse. Now people say, oh, you're crazy. We can argue all day long, but let me give you the states that don't have an income tax. Alaska, Florida, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Dakota, Texas, Washington, Wyoming, and North Dakota is at 3.2. We go all the way down 40th. And behind us is a great crowd. You got Maine, New York, Vermont, Washington, D.C., New Jersey, and Ireland. Now, one of those economies is bubbling right now, with the exception of Iowa. And what are they doing? They're turning the agricultural fields into ethanol. And the difference between ethanol there and ethanol here, they don't require it in their gas. It's voluntary. Where here in Maine, it's mandatory. Government intrusion again. So let me slide away from that, go to energy. In energy, we are the 12th highest in America. That's the bad news. 12th out of 50. Good news, the lowest in New England. For 5 years, I've been asking the legislature to remove the limitation on the renewables of solar and wind and to allow hydro to become part of the renewables. Most every state and Canada look at hydroelectricity as renewable. We don't. We only look at the first 100 megawatts as green. After that, it becomes brown. You can't make it up. This is the mentality that we maintain. Now, do I believe that wind and solar have a place in our energy portfolio? Absolutely. I'm all in. And when we discover, and the technology moves ahead so we can store electricity, like they're doing with Tesla now. Tesla's a good test case. They're gaining every year. We need that massive technology change or advancement so we can store electricity. Then it will have a much more viable place in our economy. Right now, it's what I call a boutique energy. When the wind blows, you got energy. When the sun shines, you got energy. But in February, when you have a snowstorm, you're gonna freeze. So in the last 5 years, without this legislature participating, we've lowered the homes in Maine, 80% of homes in Maine were heated by oil, are down to 62% because we brought in heat pumps, which have been very, very successful. So the issue is, to me, is all of the above. Look at all of the above. Whenever you make, whenever government picks and chooses the winners, they always seem to pick the wrong ones. I think we ought to let the markets and the risk takers determine what's viable and not viable. So that's for our energy. One thing I can tell you is in the last 4 years we put pipes in the ground. It's $500 million with the gas pipeline in the state. What we need now is to get a pipeline from Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania to Maine. It's taken us 5 years to get Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, and Massachusetts into a coalition. And with the election last November of Governor Baker in Massachusetts, he's now joined the coalition, and he's the big user along with Connecticut, so that is moving us forward much, much faster. That, I will tell you, that horse is out of the barn, and if you can catch him, good luck, because it's a fast horse, it's moving very quickly. Irrespective of what the legislature does, is the gas will be available to us by 17. They can't say we don't want natural gas. I would think that would be an awful shame, but it will only take you, the people, to tell them that you want natural gas. Here in Lewiston, you've had it for decades and decades and decades. So it's not new to you or other parts of the state, but it is a new technology and a new energy source in many areas of the state. Now, you're never going to get it all over the state because we're a sparsely populated state. Most of the population is south of Augusta, so that's the area where you're going to have a lot of natural gas up to 95. That's where the critical mass is. So you're going to have other sources like windmills, solar, pellets, heat pumps, oil. I mean, there are many, many others. So that's going to be available. The next one, I want to talk about two more issues. One is welfare. People say, oh, I hate the poor. Just the opposite. I care for the poor. I am the one that's willing to work with the poor, have a safety net that we all can depend on, make sure it's adequate, and that people understand nothing in life is free. You've got to give back to society. You can't just take it. How do we do that? We do it with a strong education system. Many people in Augusta will go to Augusta and throw money at the problem and go to the cocktail party. Well, I'll throw money at the problem. I'll roll up my sleeve and teach how to make that money last. I will teach people how to earn, not just how to take. It sounds like a simple difference, but it is a massive difference in Augusta. It's a massive difference. You know, you sit down with people, there's no more joyous day when you can help somebody and the light turns on and you know they got it. And you'll never have to worry about them again. They've now figured out how to earn a living on their own. Or they understand why it's important to pay your rent or your mortgage, and why it's important that in your course of your lifetime, you can make an actual decision to live in a rent, or you can make a decision to own. Most people will go to own once they understand the benefits of owning your own homes. That's what I think we should be doing in our government, and we do that very poorly. And we don't do it all getting on the same page, which I find very, very sad. I was born in this city. I used to go from Lincoln Street to Pierce Street, where the food store was, the surplus store. And I used to carry it back home with my brother. We'd go up, we'd be the ones that go aside to go and get the milk and cheese and the powdered eggs. I did it until I was about 11 years old. So I understand it. That's one of the reasons why I'm such an education person. I believe education will solve a ton of our problems. A whole lot of our problems. And then the final thing I'm going to discuss, and this one here, I have no clue why this is not passed in the legislature. I came up with a program last year that we give students, every student, whether they go to community college, trade school, or wherever, further education than high school. We give them interest-free loans. The state of Maine commits itself to paying off the interest. We borrow the money at about 2%. So we pay the interest. We give student loans, no interest. Then we go to our business community and say, if you pay off the student loan for this young man you just hired, we'll give you a direct dollar-for-dollar credit on your corporate income tax. To me, that takes that's a great program to attract young people. We have a couple in Portland. I use this as an example. Husband and wife. He's a PA, physician's assistant, and she's got a master's in health therapy, and they both work at the hospital. Their student loan debt is $1,500 a month. They owe $160,000, and they sent me a letter and said, Governor, can you help us? We're both 28, we'd like to have children, and we'd like to have a home someday. But we're looking at $168,000 debt with a variable rate of interest. It's horrible. So we went to the legislature, never get out of committee, never get debated. We're going to, hopefully, if we can have that discussion again. Now, I'll give you an example. People say Maine's failing in education. And to a great extent, the numbers aren't good. The numbers are not good. And if you're an employer, you know what I'm talking about. But let me tell you what we are doing that has not taken the legislature at all. We went up way up north in the very northern part of the state in Fort Kent. And it's okay to go up there because all the folks down south, and a lot of them don't know where Fort Kent is yet, so we got away with it. So what we did is there's 80 kids at Fort Kent High School back in 2011, going into the 11th grade. We took 24 names out of a hat, and we sent them to the University of Maine, no tuition. Like they're going to finish their high school at the university. Between high school and university, they're going to join together and going to make sure they get their high school diploma. What we did is this. We challenged the students to see how far they could push themselves in the last 2 years. And the results were this. One student completed a year and a half of college and got his diploma. 17 kids got their diploma and finished 1 year of college. And the others all completed at least a semester. So the point of the story is this. It's not always about money. It's about desire and aspiration. If you ask them and you push them, they will react, and they are not. Mainers are not lazy people. And so they pushed themselves and they did it. And we saved the parents and the student a whole lot of tuition. Now this year, we have 500 kids in that school. It's grown to 500. The problem is, we're doing it off the balance sheet, but you can't keep adding and adding and adding and not getting some money somewhere, because you just can't educate all the 10th graders in Maine and have to go to this little tiny outpost in Fort Kent. So you've got to have to get involved in online education and AP, and you've got to invest. We're just showing that it can be done. The other thing that's going to happen in December, and this is still without the legislature, the Finance Authority of Maine is going to restructure loans at a fixed low interest. And the Alphon Foundation, Greg Powell, the the chairman of the Alphon Foundation, has put together a program that says if our students are working in Maine and paying off their student loans, on their 5th anniversary, we're going to look at their balance. And we're going to pay off half of it. And on their 10th anniversary, if they still owe student loans, we're going to pay for it. That's how much people do care about education in Maine. It's going to move forward. And the battling and the ideology fights in the State House, I'm tired of it. Now we're going to see what we can do according to the Constitution of Maine that allows, we have 3 equal but separate branches of government. Rather than have 2 of them always fighting, we're going to see what we can do and let the legislators see what they can do. We don't pass laws. We only implement laws. The executive branch can only implement. If the law allows it, it's broad enough to allow it, we will do it. If it doesn't, we can't do it. Then we go see the Alphon Foundation to see if they want to participate on their own. If the state gave us $10 million right now with the Alphon Foundation, we could virtually increase the enrollment at the university, stabilize the enrollment at community college, because everybody wants to go to community college because it's cheaper than the university, and you can't blame them. But we've got to stabilize it because our kids deserve it. And other kids that have student loans that want to come to Maine, I welcome them because I'd like them to work in Maine. So we who are facing retirement in the not too distant future don't have to move to Florida to protect the little assets we have. But many of us are going to be faced doing that, including many in this room. So with that, I'm going to open it up and have some discussion. Anything goes. I just require you to stay civil.
Absolutely, Governor. That's my one rule. You have to remain civil. No standing up and shouting. I will come to you if you'd like to ask your question, as I mentioned earlier. We ask that you fill out these forms, and I will come to you. But first, before we get things started, I would like to recognize some of the legislators who are here tonight, the ones that we have seen and they've come in. We've got a couple, yes. We've got Representative Golden, Representative Brooks, and Senator Brady. Please stand up.
And
Yes, stand up. Thank you for being here tonight. Our first question goes to Drew Warren Voss. Where are you? Where's Drew? Right there? Okay. We have a lot of young people here tonight. It's good to see. Where are you from?
Well, I'm a student at LePage. I'm actually from Nashville, New Hampshire originally, but in the area studying. And well, I did. You'd actually started to talk about this some in the tail end of the remarks, but I just was wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on how to get young people engaged in the state, and particularly in the state and local politics, because I feel like too often my generation is either disinterested or uninformed about what's going on short of the presidential election. So any ideas you have?
I think it's pretty standard. College kids will get involved in the presidential year. It's very important. I think they should be involved. I think they should be more involved than just in the presidential year. I also believe that if they're from the state of Maine, they should be involved in their local politics, on wherever they want to live. I mean, I know a lot of kids will go to Colby and Bates and Moton, and I was the mayor of Waterville, and they voted in local elections, but they were voting in local elections with a little white piece of paper they had taken to the voting booth, and they were, told how to vote because they weren't involved. I don't think that's good. I think they ought to follow the laws of the state, and they ought to get involved to the extent that the laws permit. I think one thing that's very important for young people is whether you like it or not, whether you agree or not. We, in my generation, have created an $18 trillion bill that we're looking for you to pay for. It's sad, but it's true. And that's why I believe in how I operate the state. I believe that the lowest tax burden that we can put on our state today will help us keep the foundation of America solid and strong when the federal government can't pay its bills. And if you don't think that they'll never be able to pay their bills, you are wrong. To me, it's just a matter of when. We're fighting it every year. It's a when. And I'm not just talking about the 18 trillion. I'm talking about the 18 trillion plus the hundreds and the trillions of dollars they took out of Medicare, Medicaid, the Social Security that's going to go bankrupt unless they do something within the next 3 or 4 years. And so it's $100 trillion that we have unfunded mandates in this country. And it's not all going to come at once, but it's going to come on the younger generations. So we have to have a solid 50-state prosperous economies. The laboratories of democracy have to be solid in order to maintain the weight the federal government's going to put on the shoulders of American people.
Thank you, Governor.
Next question is from James Irwin. Where are you? James? No? Well, I'll read the question. It says, what progress has been made and what is the plan moving forward on eliminating the income tax?
Well, my understanding right now is there's some work being done outside of government through the private sector. I'm trying to reintroduce an income tax question that will deal with it in a referendum in 2016. I support that. I support it because I think it's so critical that the Maine people, whether they go to zero or not, it depends on prosperity. You can't pay it all, you can't get rid of it all at once. You need to have growth in order to get rid of it. But we need to be addressing it because you can't be the 40th highest taxed state and then take on the federal tax burden that is being placed on us. You just simply can't. I'll give you an example. In 1972, Canada brought in social medicine. They brought it in, it was 90% paid by the federal government and 10% paid by the provinces. It was a 90-10 split. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Well, let's fast forward from 1972 to 2015. And currently, it's 50-50. 50% federal, 50% provincial. The province of Quebec is 7 times greater than the state of Maine. The state of Maine spends $2 million a year on Medicaid. 7 times greater would make it $14, right? $billion. It's $34 billion is the province's share of healthcare. And the philosophy is this: if you don't believe it, just watch. Because when I retire, all I can do is say, we tried. Because this is what the strategy, this is how people feel. There's no amount of your money that I won't spend on my health care. It's that simple. And that's how you get to these messes. And it's not whether to me, it's just a matter of when. Already we're seeing some talk about premiums skyrocketing this year, as high as 50% in states that expanded with state exchanges. Because it's simply, free is free. When you're not accountable, you have no health savings account, you have nothing, no co-pays, everything is free, then you're going to spend it because nobody gets out of sight, out of mind. And that's a real big problem.
Betty Olson?
students they had a night class, they all went back.
Angelo Butch DeSantis?
Santos?
Hold on, just hold on. Come on, everybody can hear you. Where are you from?
Durham, Maine. I've been trying to get this question answered. I've talked with many people about it, and I wonder if you can help me out. What does the Maine State Principals Association do with all the money that they collect at all the tournament games?
They build a nest egg. They're probably one of the wealthiest, strongest organizations in the state that deals with education in any form. They do some good things, but they're pretty wealthy.
Why don't they give it back to some of these kids who can't afford to play sports, and their families are trying the best they can, especially in Lewiston, there's a lot of high school kids that play hockey that have to pay about $800 a year to play hockey, not including the gas and time the parents put
Been
in.
saying it, I'm with you 100%, been saying it for years.
And these people are rich, they're wealthy, they're rich.
I don't know if they're rich, but the organization does pretty well in the annual tournaments. And it should go back. I know that some of it goes back to the schools, but they should use it in the year which the students play athletics. I don't disagree with you. Trying to get anything changed in education is nearly impossible. I have been taking shots from everyone, and it's from superintendents, 127 superintendents, from all the principals and assistant principals. We have the average high school of 1,500 in the state of Maine, in the United States. Average high school is about 1,500 students. State of Maine, that's a large school district. Now, I'm not going to suggest that they're the problem. They're part of the problem. Because we spend so much money on the top end of education and not enough in the classroom. And I'm sure the superintendent's always fighting for money. No question about it. But this is an urban area. It's not the rural areas of 80 kids in the entire school. We do a terrible, terrible job in using online education. I continue to buy courses called the Great Courses. I must have 20 of them that I'm looking at all the time. They're videos, some of them are DVD, others are just CDs, and you just listen or you watch. They're great courses. There are great brains in this country. Just a matter of investing a little bit. We do very little of that. We do far less than many states. But we're starting to gather. Education in Maine is a shame that the unions have garnered so much power, and the Principals Association, the Superintendent Association, it's like talking to a wall. They will not discuss anything with us. They're the experts, and that's the end of it.
Thank you, Governor. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
So Governor Linda Scott would like to know, this is education related, the 2004 referendum was voted in that the state would pay 55% of public school costs. When will this happen? She asked.
It'll never happen in the state of Maine because it's not possible. And I'll tell you why. Every single year, the person who has to pay 55% has nothing to say about what makes up 55%. And what I mean by that is this. Superintendents passing their budget, and we have to, as a state, say, okay, we got to automatically go pay 55% of that. Irrespective of where the money's spent, we have no say. So we start looking at it, and we look at Ladle High School has a French teacher, French 5 teacher, 5 students. You go to Winslow, French 5 teacher, 4 students. Is that appropriate? First of all, you don't have enough students in the classroom to have them debate. But that's how it goes. You can't determine. We receive the money, and that's it. Then the school system determines how much is the 55%. The truth be known, we asked the school districts to pay for their own retirement when they retire, teachers retire. Why should the state pay for teacher retiring? Because the state is not hiring them. They have nothing to say about it, have nothing to say about setting the wages. But the unions and the school districts determine how much that's going to be. Is it adequate? Do you know that it's unconstitutional in the state of Maine for the state to pay $1 towards education, but we've never changed the Constitution? We've been doing it for decades, but it's clearly the Constitution says the state will only ensure that local communities pay for educating their students at their cost. And I'm meeting with the Chief Justice on Friday and saying, why is this continue to happen? And they say, well, we take the precedent and you've been doing it, so we would say you've got to continue doing it. So if that's the case, then why are we asking the government to take an oath to the United States Constitution and an oath to the Maine Constitution when the Constitution doesn't mean what the Constitution says? It only means what the court says it says when they decide to discuss it in the courts. But that's a fact. So when it comes to 55%, it cannot be, you'll never get to 55% because you don't allow the taxpayer a say in what's 55%. That's the problem.
Next question, Dr. Lewis Tallarico.
Hello, I'm from Washington now, but born and raised and grew up here in Lewiston, practiced here most of my adult life. My parents founded Luigi's in 1953, worked there a lot. Anyway, and I kind of consider myself some sort of a news junkie these days, but I don't always keep up on things.
You say a news junkie?
News junkie, I watch
Okay.
it.
Do you watch it or do you read it?
Watch it. I don't know. But anyway, I know when this has to do with gun control and shootings in schools and things. And when Eric Brakey, I think, and I don't always remember who's done what, especially with all these presidential candidates. But Eric, I think, put a bill in the legislature to eliminate the concealed weapon permit. And I think, if my memory is right, it passed. Is that right, Eric?
It did pass. Constitutional carry is now in effect.
Recently, I know at least one of the presidential candidates, the black pediatric neurosurgeon,
Yes.
has come out. I never thought of this, but they've said, when there are school shootings, they end when the guys, the good guys with the guns show up, and they either take out the predator or the predator kills himself. And so there's sort of silent or movement to arm the good guys. I'm a good guy, and have always growing up in Maine, we hunted and fish, and I think I remember you get to be my age, it's live and let live. But anyway, yes, I don't know if I heard what your stance is on gun control, but for me, I think that's a novel idea.
Well,
if they had guns in the classroom with people who know how to handle them, you could stop things pretty soon.
let me give you one statistic, and I just read it last week. It shocked me. It has shocked me. Since 1960, all mass shootings in the United States, barring one, just one, out of all the mass shootings, we get several a year, since 1960, every single one of the mass shootings, except for one, was in a gun-free zone. So we don't allow guns in a zone, and then we're surprised when somebody goes in there and kills people. So I'm all in. I believe in constitutional carry. I believe if a teacher or someone who works at the schools take the proper training. I'm not talking about just going and buying guns and putting a gun on your hip. But if you have proper training, and I think that well, let me say one thing before I say that. I have a little sign on my desk that says you can't fix stupid and you can't legislate intelligence. Okay? Now, having said that, I think it's stupid to put a sign on a wall that says gun-free zone and then let anybody come in with a gun. I just don't think. If you invite it, it will show up. And the gun-free zone sign is inviting people to do bad things. So I do believe that gun-free zones are bad. I do believe that we need to be more attentive to who has guns. But I think the other thing, and I don't know this one specifically, but most of the gun shootings, the mass murders around the country, if you look at the perpetrator, there's severe mental illness involved. You know, Colorado, Sandy Hook, Oregon, I mean, there's always some factors there that say that that person probably should not have had a gun. Now, I know somebody say that's anecdotal, fine. Why give them a chance?
The next person doesn't wish to ask the question, but she would like this answered. How will you improve the school system in Maine, especially colleges and higher education?
Okay, college and higher education, two things need to happen. I think MCCS is doing a wonderful job with the acting president. They've changed an awful lot of things. We're educating our children for $3,400 a year. They're one of the best values that you can get in Maine. If you go up to Maine Maritime, I think Maine Maritime is just phenomenal. Now, granted, there was a what I call a massive accident, and you don't see that often, but it happens. That was what I would call a perfect storm. I think they're telling me that everything was done correctly. It's just that the loss of power was a real disaster for them. The University of Maine system, under the new chancellor, I think is moving in the right direction. I think the Board of Trustees moving in the right direction. I think we too often looked at ourselves, looked at the mirror and thought we were great. We needed to do some different things to keep up with the rest of higher education in the country. And we failed. I think the university is addressing it now. They're addressing the recruitment of out-of-state students. They're addressing the international recruitment. It took them a decade to realize that every year, 20 years ago, we had 225,000 students in our K through 12. Now we're down to 180,000. They didn't adjust to that very quickly. And if you're not recruiting outside, you're not going to maintain the level of students that you need in your classes. And then you have the private schools like the Hussons, the Colbys, the Bates, the Bowdens, the University of New England, St. Joseph's, Thomas, that really the smaller schools had to survive. And so they did what they had to do, the non-land grant schools. So I think higher education is on the right track. Are they there yet? No. I mean, we talked today with the president of community colleges. He gave me all the things they've been working on the last 2 years and all the things that they are going to continue to work on, and that list is still as long as the one they just completed. So higher ed understands their problems and are moving forward.
Molly Ryan?
Now, wait a minute. Let me finish the question for the second. Education as a whole, between K through 12, between K through 12, until the Maine people and the parents and the grandparents demand progress out of the school system, you got what you got. That's it. Nothing's going to change until you demand it, because the union controls us. There are two winners and two losers. The management of the school system and the union. of the school system are the winners, because that's where the money goes. The losers are the teachers and the students, because they have less to say than anybody else. It's the, and I've seen some head shake. Let me tell you something. The last election, $17 million was spent against me. And $7 million we spent out of the $17 million. Half came from the education side. They spent over $300 million in 2014. They went after 5 governors in particular, and they only got 1. So, boy, believe me, I know what I'm talking about when I say union money is in education. Now, just to say about question 1, it's constitutional amendment, they're exempt.
Molly Ryan? Do you want to read it for her? Okay.
What's your name? Hi, my name is Lauren. Hi, Governor. Molly is not here, but she asked me to fill in for her. This question is regarding the $15 minimum wage right now. And her question is, how do you think the $15 an hour minimum wage proposed in Portland will affect the economy?
It will devastate Maine economy. Let me tell you, we're in 2 places. There's 6,000 people right now making minimum wage. Once you take away service in communities, 6,000 people who are making minimum wage full time. What it's going to do is 2 things. The elderly will be asked to work part-time. They're going to have to, because they're on fixed income, so they're going to come out of retirement, work 20 hours a week, supplement their income. It's going to devastate young people. They're not going to be able to find jobs. Now you're just thinking through. Now a lady told me the other day on the radio, she said, "Governor, you're totally wrong." I said, if you go to $15, you go to Dunkin' Donuts at Chicago, it's going to be $2 anymore, $2.10. It's going to be $2.75, $3. The donut's not going to be $1, it's going to be $1.50. No, Governor, you're dead wrong. All Dunkin' Donuts has got to do is sell more coffee. I repeat it. All Dunkin' Donuts has to do is sell more coffee. That's true. But who's going to buy it? People say it's not going to affect your groceries. Well, the bakery, LePage bakery, they make the bread. They hire people to make the bread. They package the bread. They put the bread on a truck. The truck goes to the store. The store takes the bread off the truck and up to the shelf, and you come in and you buy it. Now you double the cost, and I know they don't because they pay higher than minimum wage, but if you double the cost, it's going to affect your bread. Or 40% is going to affect your bread, or 30% is going to affect your bread. Like I know for a fact, and I don't know what they are now since I've been gone 5 years, but when I was at Martin's 5 years ago, there was no one in that company making a minimum wage. Nobody. The problem is, if you increase minimum wage, if you're $2 away from minimum wage and you increase it 50 cents, you want to stay $2 away from minimum wage. It has an inflationary aspect that's going to really hurt everybody. Now, there's nobody working in the state government making a minimum wage that I'm aware of, because I've asked and they tell me no. I'm sure there's probably some part-time, full-time people. 100,000 people in the union. These people are not making minimum wage. Every single state employee will get a raise if the minimum wage goes up because their contract is tied to the minimum wage. So if you're making $12, the minimum wage goes from 8, let's say, to 10, you're going to 14. That means your taxes are going up. It's that simple. Now, you look at the reverse of that. That's the inflationary aspect. Now let's look at deflation. I went into Russia in 2008. And back then, there was 5 million cars in Moscow. Now it's somewhere like 11 million cars, that I'm told. The average salary for a school teacher is $800 a month. Not a lot of money, right? We'd all say, boo, a doctor making $5,000 a year. A general practitioner. Do you know what the bread was? 30 cents. Do you know what a gallon of heating oil was? 88 cents. A dozen eggs was like 50 cents. So, the point is, the economy will seek its own level of the available disposable income. And that's how it works. Anyone else?
We've got another one from Senator Brakey on question 1.
Trouble. Very good setup, by the way.
Well, thank you. So this November, the Maine people will have a choice to make on question 1, which would put more taxpayer money into publicly funded local campaigns. I just want to know your thoughts on that, and if you think that that's going to benefit the Maine people in any way.
First of all, the question says, what the TV ads are saying, they want to see outsiders, these large PACs, that give money to someone to register, okay? But the large PAC doesn't have to register for his contribution. It's just the money you give to the clean election. So you just register the PAC, and that's all you gotta do. I just looked at what is going on. The top 3 donors. You know who the top 3 donors are for question 1? Does anybody know? George Soros, 2/3. The co-founder of Facebook, he gave 1/3, roughly. And then there's a whole lot of unions in the state that all gave a little money. The only thing that's registered is the name of the union and the name of the organization. And George Soros, smart, just incorporated a PAC, gave money to the PAC gave it to the clean to the election. He does the name, never shows up. You've got to go down 3 layers to find out. Now, let me tell you something about question 1. It says we're going to add more money, taxpayer money, to the election. We're going to just add $3.2 million. Sounds good on the surface. But the way the question is written, it's a constitutional amendment. And the legislature is allowed to determine how much money is going to go in to clean elections. Now, the language of the bill says, for the governor's rate, they put the governor back in now. We took it out 2 years ago because I don't think that any person who wants to be governor of this state should depend on you paying for it. He should be able to have enough people willing to give him the funding to get his message out. And you shouldn't be forced to furnish your taxpayer dollars to the people you don't want to win. I believe that's wrong. But this is what would have happened in 2010 and what would happen this year. I mean last year, 2014. In 2010, there were 23 people in the primaries. According to question 1, they qualified to up to $1 million each. That's $23 million. Then it says, those who get through the primary and are candidates for governor, they qualify for $2 million. In 2010, if you recall, there were 3 independents, a Republican and a Democrat. Now it's another $10 million. So the 2010 election would have cost the people in this room, just for the governor, $33 million or $34 million. In 2014, 3 candidates. You qualify up to $1 million for the primary, even if you don't have an opponent. They're going to give you up to $1 million. And then you're going to get another $2 million for the general election. Folks, we don't have that kind of money. Only if you raise the income tax. We have plenty of money. Because that's the hook. The hook is there's never enough money. There's never enough of your money I want to spend on my priorities. Think about that. there's never enough of your money that I can spend on my priorities. And that's very, very telling in these type of questions. That question, I'll say it's poorly written for a person to walk up and understand, but it's brilliantly written by those who want to pass it. It is really the biggest scam since I've been governor, and I'm totally against it.
Well, Governor, we are out of time, but whenever I
Oh,
say
we
that,
started late.
we're gonna take one more question.
Yeah, take two.
All right, take two. This one's from Zohar Osman. How will you help people who are on welfare to get jobs to support their family?
Well, let me tell you, right now, we have unemployment in the state of 4.6% statewide, 3.5% in the Portland area or somewhere around there. The problem right now is not whether or not you can find a job if you're able-bodied. The problem, we have two problems right now. Number one is we can't find enough people to do the jobs that we have available. Seriously, have a shortage of people right now. And number two, the people that are looking for work don't have the skills that are needed in the jobs that we're trying to fill. So, how do you do it? It's through adult education, community college education, the trades. We need to put more money, more time and effort in training people. Not we have what is called the 4 squares. The federal government says it's $10 million a year, and we spend it on training people. I'm told now that 50% of it goes to training, 50% goes to salaries. When I was elected in 2010, 72% was going to salaries, and 28% going to training. That's not the way to handle it. The way you handle it is you work through the community colleges, the university, and you have retraining systems in your schools. I know there's one at Kennebec Valley Community College because when I was employed at March, we built one. We put one in there. And so you train people for specific jobs or specific skills. The days of just finding a worker and sending them. One thing we did when I started governor is we had career centers. You walked in, there was file cabinets down the middle. On one side, they worked with people on unemployment. On the other side, they worked with companies looking for employees, but they never talked to each other. They never talk to each other. Now, they work together. The person who's working with the company is also working with people on unemployment. Do you know that in the last 5 years, you can go on unemployment and never have to go into a center. Do it online. I just don't know how many people say be the secretary at Clinton. Because we never checked. Now we are. Once in the 26 weeks they were on, they have to have face-to-face. We set up the appointments and we set up with the employer whether they were there or not. We don't just say go get 5 signatures that you look for a job. No more than that. So that's what we're doing. But the biggest single reason is finding enough people with enough skills. And the state of Maine has to do a much, much better job making sure that the workforce has the skills for the jobs that are available in the market. And that in itself will clear out minimum wage. For instance, right now, anybody studying cybersecurity, we're talking 75,000, 80,000 to start. You go to Maine Maritime Academy, you come out of there over 100,000 a year. But they're training for specific skills. Very specific. So that's what we need to do more of. One more question, and then we go get a donut.
All right, John Kirsch, where are you?
What I wanted to say to you was I truly believe that you're a very honest individual and you truly care about all the people in Maine. I wonder why you care so much that you're willing to take all the abuse
these policies that were put in place by previous administrations, and in some cases, benefit themselves.
Well, let me tell you, there are three types of people elected to government. Seriously, I've come to the conclusion that 186 people there are three types of people. The person who's there for the right reason is about a third. It's about a third of people in Augusta that will take the beating every day the way our office takes. The next third are those that are there for their own personal gains, agenda. The good old boys that like to make a wheel and deal. We know who they are, and they're not that damaging. But the third group of folks, is the scariest. Those are the people that go to Augusta satisfied to get a blue plate or a red plate and off of their cars, and they sit in the back of the room and never open their mouths. Those will go along to get along, and they vote the way they're told. And that means when you have that, you have only one or two people running the whole show. That's our problem. Why am I taking the beating? It's very simply this. I think I said it when I opened up. I was born, raised, schooled, and worked in Maine. I love it. I love this state. I love the people in this state. I want my children and my grandchildren to live in this state. I have 2 grandchildren and 5 kids, 5 children. 3 of my children don't live in Maine. My grandchildren don't live in Maine. I find that to be sad. So I'm willing to take everything they got to throw at me to make sure that we challenge status quo. Status quo will keep us poor. Prosperity will elevate our standard of living, and we can keep our people here. And I'm willing to do it until every ounce of my blood or I'm turned out. Because that's what Maine should be all about, and that's who I'm all about. So thank you, and I'll pay you the $20 when I leave.
Thank you very much.